Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo, what up, Bolt fam? It's the director. Chargers fans, what a crazy weekend we had with the Chargers scrimmage on Sunday. Wow! Talk about some huge plays, some huge insights into what we can expect in the 2022 season. It's gonna be a good one, but I wanted to start this video off by shouting out the fans. Bolt fam, just take a look at this image, man. How absolutely incredible is this? The fan base has certainly come out of hibernation over the last couple of seasons. It really does feel good to see the community showing up and showing support for the best team in Los Angeles, really proving all of the people poking fun at the Chargers for years about a lack of fans, etc., just proving those people wrong, man. And it's very evident in the energy, the attendance, the fans showing up, that the Chargers really do have one of the best followings in the NFL in terms of quality and, yes, slowly but surely quantity as well. So we got a great look at the Chargers team this last Sunday as they did go head-to-head in their scrimmage for this offseason. And wow, man, do the Chargers look great right now. Specifically, I would say, take a look at the Chargers depth, right? How is that shaping up? Some pretty nice competition that we're seeing throughout the entire roster, including these backups, right? Because this team has some very good players fighting for a roster spot, and it really did show up on Sunday. So in today's video, I really wanted to get a deeper look at what we saw from the Chargers on Sunday. We're going to get a deeper look at this roster when they do face the Los Angeles Rams this upcoming Saturday, which we should be able to live stream our commentary for. It should be a good time. Do not miss it. But I also wanted to highlight, some of the things we may have learned about this roster and the players fighting for a spot going forward. So it should be a very good one today, man. Some very fun stuff we witnessed this last weekend. Question in the comments like we always do. Who is an under-the-radar player that stands the best chance of making the team as of right now? There's some great options, and we're going to be going over a few of them in today's video as well. Before we do kick off, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me a lot. Let's get into this one. Lights, camera, action! The Chargers electric scrimmage, what we learned this past weekend about the Bolts in that practice. Guys, let's take a look so far. Let's kick things off right now first with the offense, right? First segment, the offense strikes back. Now, I would say, a huge point of emphasis throughout training camp so far in these off-season videos has been the defense. The defense has really been showing up. And of course, with so many quality signings on the defensive side of the ball, it's really easy to see a lot of improvements from the Chargers defense this offseason. But you know what? It's easy to also forget that we had a top 5 offense last season. And in this scrimmage, we got a great reminder of what we've got in Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and the rest of that offensive unit. This was their day, and they looked absolutely on point. So we'll obviously highlight some great play from the defense as well, but the offense really has been showing out for the last couple of days, and specifically in this scrimmage. So let's start things off with this offensive unit and Justin Herbert, of course, right? Justin Herbert saw himself a fantastic day on Sunday, really showing the league and its fans that he is showing no signs of slowing down at this point. Wow, I talked about a tongue twister. No signs of slowing down this offseason. He's been looking, as on point as any quarterback in the NFL, showing his ability to spread the ball around, utilize every single weapon on that offense. It feels like every weapon is a threat at this point with Justin Herbert and the reads that he's been making. Now, of course, we are going to see some slight favors in terms of targets, which we will be getting into in just a moment, but it was really, really nice to see him utilize what he had in front of him to keep the chains moving. Speaking of moving, he's been moving as well, man. He's been using his ability to run, his mobility to extend plays and even gain yards. He had a big run on Sunday as well, which did result in a nice gain. Of course, in an actual game, maybe he doesn't get as many yards as, of course, you do not want to be hitting your quarterback in any given moment in the offseason, but still very nice to see Justin Herbert using all of the weapons and all of his tools, at his disposal to make sure he continues to gain momentum in terms of offense, which is really cool to see. And one big thing I love to see as well, especially when it comes to a franchise quarterback like Justin Herbert, his pocket presence has also evidently been taking a step forward too. And yes, you know what? I'm going to say pun intended on that one. Stepping forward into the pocket, finding time, knowing when to escape the pocket. It really does feel like he has a better understanding of how to utilize that valuable time bought by his offensive line. Now, I don't know if it's been a while or if it's just been a big boost this offseason too, but another thing that I really wanted to highlight is his release, right? His release has been unbelievable. The speed at which he gets the ball out of his hands has been insane. We saw a couple of passes that looked, and I hate using this as like, the example, but it looked like, Mahomes-esque, right? Kind of side slinging it, getting it out of his hands as quickly as possible, finding an angle for the ball to travel to its receiver. I liked a lot of what I saw from Justin Herbert on Sunday, guys, and it really does speak to the benefit, I would say, of him working with a system for the first time in his career that remains consistent from the year before. Of course, we do have Joe Lombardi, who was great last year, bringing back that same offensive scheme. I think it's really been showing evidence that Justin Herbert's been able to focus on other elements of his game, and it really did shine this last weekend. Next up, one of the biggest stories from this scrimmage and from training camp as a whole has been the rise of Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter. You guys are going to see Carter here on the screen first, but let's start with Palmer, right? Palmer, in my opinion, has been one of the most improved players on the roster as of right now, and that really is saying something because he showed plenty of promise in his rookie year. Lots of flashes, big plays. Of course, he didn't get all the targets in the world, but man, did he make the most of them, especially in critical moments for the Chargers. And as stated before, I don't know, he just feels so refined in his routes, in his hands. They feel as reliable as anyone's in the league. I don't know, man. It feels like he is definitely raring up for a very big year two in the NFL. And you pair this with the amount of times that Herbert has looked his way, Josh Palmer could be one of those guys to look out for even this season, year two, to really break out into the league. Now let's talk about the man up here on the screen, DeAndre Carter. We did talk about Carter in our last training camp video because the dude's just been absolutely on fire. No matter the day, the situation, scrimmage, drills, whatever, Carter's just been one of those dudes that has really been shining, and he's been ascending quickly in terms of his spot on the depth chart. I don't know, man. He even led the team, I think, in yards in that scrimmage a couple of days back. He's been looking fantastic. He almost feels like that prime Tyron Johnson that we were all hyped about a few seasons back. Of course, we know how that ended, but still, it feels like he's got the ability to get open deep, make big plays, and offer more than just being that return specialist that many of us believed he was signed to be, right? And he had a few big plays on Sunday to prove that, almost resulting in a touchdown. Some people will say it was a touchdown. Some people say he's just short. But either way, huge play. Justin Herbert's DeAndre Carter, big gains, which I do think resulted in a touchdown, I think. Yes, I think it was Austin Eckler right after that. I also do think his speed and his trick play ability are evidently valued by the team. Of course, Joe Lombardi. Joe Lombardi, one of the only things that really frustrated me was his usage of screens, I would say, in terms of trying to get the wide receiver more involved in that way. And of course, we do have great wide receivers, but you really need that burst to make those screens effective. I feel like a guy like DeAndre Carter is going to be utilized just that way. It does feel like we finally got a weapon that not only can help us in our special teams, but as well as on the field as a weapon for Justin Herbert, providing speed and maybe trick play ability. So when all said and done, this duo of DeAndre Carter, Josh Palmer is really starting to shine. But perhaps the biggest revelation, at least by me this weekend, has been the roles that they're likely going to play with the team, right? At this point, with what we've seen from Josh Palmer, it's hard to imagine him as anything other than the Chargers' locked and loaded wide receiver 3, right? He's just too reliable, too talented to share very many touches, in my opinion, in terms of, wide receiver 3. A lot of us felt that wide receiver 3 would be a battle between him and Jalen Guyton. I do think it's going to be Josh Palmer, for the most part, taking reps at wide receiver 3. And you know what? Carter, on the other hand, he may provide a more shocking result to the depth chart than even Josh Palmer, because Palmer's really been kind of, quite evident in his second season. Carter, on the other hand, it feels like he may have snagged wide receiver 4 right under the nose of Jalen Guyton, which is fair given the play of DeAndre Carter so far. But let's not write off Jalen Guyton quite yet. He still does have a spot on this team, in my opinion, and a role to play with this team. But since Carter, and I would say actually this is reinforced because of Carter also being our return specialist, right? I think it's reasonable to believe that Carter and Jalen Guyton will somewhat share the role of wide receiver 4 depending on the situation. But right now, DeAndre Carter, if he was looking at earning more reps, he has certainly done that this offseason in training camp and certainly in the scrimmage as well, where Justin Herbert has really, really liked his availability. So feels like Carter's on his way to offering you more than your typical special teamer, and he really has been one of the studs, the camp stars to witness this offseason. Next up, let's talk a little bit about the receivers as a whole. Of course, you got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams doing Keenan and Mike things. I think Keenan only saw 1 reception, but Mike Williams did get a healthy amount of targets, resulting in 4 receptions and some nice plays as well. So we know what we're getting out of Keenan Allen. Going to see a lot more slot work. He's going to be as reliable as ever. One of the best wide receivers in the league. Mike Williams, who is continuing to evolve into this X receiver position, has really been doing a good job of that as well, right? Seemingly, he's been expanding his route tree. Feels like the Chargers want him to be more than just a jump ball specialist, and as a result of that, it's looking like it's translating, with better routes, release, sharpness all around, hands, angles. It really does feel like Mike Williams is adopting that role and embracing that role after being extended with the Chargers, just a few months back. Now, lightly touching on the other weapons as well, specifically the tight ends and Gerald Everett and the other guys they have there too. It feels like Justin Herbert really loves these targets, and of course, you want to provide your superstar, franchise quarterback with reliable help over the middle via these talented tight ends. Now, when it comes to Gerald Everett, I think at this point, I don't know if it's safe to say, but it's kind of leaning that way, that Everett is not really becoming the camp star that I hoped from him when we first started speculating about who's going to really break off. I do think that's been DeAndre Carter. But he's already starting to develop chemistry with Justin Herbert. And at worst, he's looking like a very much improved Jared Cook. And I do think, even the backup tight ends might get more involved here, especially guys like Donald Parham, who did not participate in that scrimmage due to, I think, a very light hamstring injury. He should be back very soon. But the tight ends will be involved. And I do think Gerald Everett is going to play a big role with this team, especially when it comes to generating yards after contact. Donald Parham has been looking absolutely spectacular. So if I'm the Chargers right now and I'm taking a look at the talent I have at tight end, a talent I've got at wide receiver right now, which is shocking, maybe I do implement a couple more, 2 tight end sets. Maybe I do implement a few more, spread looks in terms of getting more wide receivers on the field. I don't know. It feels like the Chargers are discovering a lot in terms of talent in these receivers. Tight ends, backup wide receivers, all of them are going to have a role to play at some point. But a big thing that I did want to emphasize before we wrap up the receiver category here is how much lower of a number we're seeing in drops this offseason. Have you guys noticed that? I know it's been a big problem the last couple of seasons, but this season, I don't know. I don't know if it's being talked about quite as much. It's looking very, very good. And I know it's just camp and things will change in an actual game, but it feels like for whatever reason, whether it be, an adjustment on Justin Herbert's part in terms of, how fast and how hard he's getting that ball out of his hands, or the receivers adjusting in terms of that force, we're seeing cleaner grabs across the board, and that's definitely something I would say to praise and celebrate at this point, because drops were a very big problem the last couple of seasons, and so far that problem is trending in the direction of at least becoming more manageable this season. Now, next up, to wrap up the offense, let's talk a little bit about the running backs. A quad running back attack. maybe, just maybe, I don't know. The Chargers are certainly bringing in more options in terms of versatility and what a player can offer from the running back position. So first, I kind of wanted to start with a guy that, honestly, yes, I will own this. Joshua Kelly is kind of proving a lot of people wrong, myself included. I felt Kelly definitely a very strong cut candidate this offseason. He's been having a fantastic camp. I would say his biggest strength is coming in terms of as a blocker, right? Pass protection from the running back position. He's been looking great. He's been showing more burst, more force, more reliability through the air. He's been all around looking improved. Now, will that translate into the actual season? We'll have to wait and look, because I do also have to point out that this isn't the first time we've seen Kelly have a great camp and then maybe fumble away that opportunity when it comes to actual game day. But so far, so good for Joshua Kelly. I think his roster spot is a little safer now than it was a couple of weeks ago. Now, Austin Ekeler, the running back one for the Chargers, I would say, again, had a fantastic camp. He is really turning into one of those players that it has the ability to carry an offense for a drive or two if needed, because of his ability as a running back and as a receiver. You know what? He's getting a ton of targets. And in my opinion, that's an excellent use of his talents. In my opinion, if I were to categorize Austin Ekeler as a player in the NFL, of course, halfback, running back is the first thing you think of. But what is that archetype to me? I think it's definitely a receiving back because of how much talent he has through the air as well. And if you can get more out of Austin Ekeler utilizing him that way, I say please get him more involved through the air if you can. He's already very involved, but even more so would be even, again, a better look at utilizing those strengths. Then you've got Spiller and Horvath, who've made some awesome plays as well. Xander Horvath was very exciting to watch. Spiller was very excited to watch. Mainly these guys generating their yardage through the air again. Again, it feels like the Chargers may rely heavily on, getting these guys involved in the passing game as well, which is a very, very good sign. I also wanted to highlight Xander Horvath and his ability to really, generate yards after contact. The dude loves contact. He's a contact beast. And it just, again, offers the Chargers something different from all of these backs, while also helping complement one another with how good they are through the air. If I had to kind of take a stab in the dark here, it kind of feels like the Chargers may rely heavily on the rookies in terms of their ground game, while getting Austin Ekeler an expanded role as a receiver. And you could even make the argument that all of these guys may have an expanded role as a receiver in 2022 as well. Now, we saw a flash of it just a moment ago, but let's go ahead and get started things off here on defense with the defensive line. This segment called Double Stuffed is the Move. I know there's got to be some Oreo fans in the audience, right? Double stuffed has always been the move, and hence the inspiration towards the title here. Now, the run defense is starting to prove it is much improved from last season, right? Sebastian Joseph Day led an interior unit that held the Bolts running backs to just 3 yards per attempt on Sunday. And guys, you take a look at the Chargers last season, they were allowing 5, 6, 7 yards sometimes per attempt, depending on the opponent. 3 yards is a huge improvement from the interior of that defensive line. Sure, the Chargers, at some point did mainly shift their focus to using their backs through the air, but the improvement is absolutely evident, right? And the competition at that unit is very, very stiff too. So already we're seeing nicer production, bigger play, big bodies, and impacts up the middle. But the competition with all these players rotating also makes me feel really good about, whoever wins the starting job and whoever wins as a backup on this roster too. Because with Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, Brendan Fayoko, you got Covington, Tito, Tillery, among others fighting for roster spot, the quality of play that we're seeing from the entire group as a whole feels elevated. And it does feel like it's translating to higher quality of play in terms of stopping the run. So that's a very, very good sign too. Another position I did want to highlight in this scrimmage was the linebacker core. Are we a little bit thinner at linebacker right now? Kind of. Not really. You got to take a look at the players that were actually playing, right? Because the Chargers linebacker group was a little bit thin with a lot of players sitting out. We had Kyle Van Noy, Tranquil, Murray, of course, Neiman. These guys were out. But this did give us a good look at some... Oh, wait a minute. That was the Horvath picture that we're supposed to see before. There's Horvath and his contact. As far as the linebackers are concerned, though, It does feel like we did get a nice look at maybe some of the deeper guys on the roster, right? Some of the guys in those backup positions fighting for a spot on the roster. And among them, one of the biggest gems this offseason that has really stood out is Damon Lloyd. He's been all over the field, man. I think I practiced even a couple days ago. He did defend the pass that was ended up being tipped and intercepted by J.C. Jackson. It feels like his usage, no matter where he is on the field, has been pretty reliable, right? And he might be one of the biggest gems that we see out of free agency this season. All over the field, making big plays against the run. The pass doesn't really matter. He's been all around very solid for the Chargers in camp. And if he keeps it up, I think he could definitely make a case to be added to the 53, maybe as a depth guy making his way up. Because, again, he's just been one of those guys that's been making an impact pretty much every play he's been on the field. As for the other linebackers, you had other guys. I think Amin Agbangbemiga was kind of the other featured dude. Things are looking okay, but the Chargers definitely showing a lot of looks in terms of getting their DBs more involved in those areas. You know what? That's our next category here. Nasir, Raheem, and the DB group. Now, yes, we're still waiting for Derwin James. If Derwin James had been in the scrimmage, maybe things are a little bit different. Maybe the DBs look even more insane. But you know what? While we do wait for Derwin's deal to be finalized, it does give more opportunity to guys like Nasir Adderley, right? This puts Nasir into a nice position to take the reins, maybe step up his leadership a little bit more, and more importantly, his game. So far, Nasir Adderley has delivered. Of course, we're seeing a play here, him versus Gerald Everett, who had a nice play there. And of course, the DBs and the defense as a whole didn't have their best day, but it doesn't take away from what we're seeing in terms of improvement. Honestly, some of the things that we're seeing from Nasir Adderley individually, he's probably been one of the best defensive players that we've seen on defense this offseason, and he certainly was a big impact on Sunday as well. I loved his involvement playing closer to the line of scrimmage, defending against the run, cleaning up those tackles, making sure to get his arms around the carrier. He's been looking very, very good. And you know what? Honestly, it does feel like his ability to move around the field a little bit more is unlocking a lot of things in terms of his play, right? His coverage, his positioning, his awareness, overall quickness. These have taken big leaps forward. And I do think that's going to translate this season. I do think, again, in a contract year for Nasir Adderley, he's really stepping it up big time. That's going to help the Chargers vastly in that secondary. The other guy I did kind of want to highlight was Raheem Lane, who's definitely been kind of one of those standout guys that has been shockingly good as far as free agent ads have been concerned. He's been outstanding in coverage, even against the first team offense. And at this point, the Chargers have some incredible depth. I would say even options at safety. So Raheem Lane, kind of a bigger dude, also playing close to the line of scrimmage, making some big plays, looking good in coverage. He's been looking fantastic. What does this say for the Chargers DB group, for the safety group in particular, right? Well, with more nickel and dime looks this season, I would expect the Bolts to roster at least 4 safeties, right? But that still doesn't, uncomplicate things in terms of who are those 4 people going to be. Maybe the Chargers do consider 5, you never know. But with guys like, Derwin and Nasir Adderley being locks, we got guys like JT Woods, Mark Webb, Raheem Lane now kind of coming out of nowhere, and Alohi Gilman behind them. The battle to make the roster is more real than ever. And it does feel like these Chargers DBs are going to bring a new quality to the position that we haven't seen in quite some time, because all of these guys can be utilized pretty heavily, especially in a system like Brandon Staley that's going to be utilizing more DBs than maybe other teams in the league. So those guys, that competition looks great. Do I see Raheem Lane making the roster? It's going to be a fight, but I do think it's a possibility. And lastly, to kind of highlight these DBs, number 27, as you're seeing here on the field, the corners were, again, another obvious strength in the scrimmage, as they have been pretty much all practice. Despite a strong day by the offense, the corners show that they are going to be a problem for opposing offenses this season. Sticky coverage, great awareness, positioning, they look on point. And even Michael Davis, who's been kind of struggling in the early days of practice, has been showing some big improvement, right? Made some big plays, forcing a couple incompletions. He's been looking crisp. This group, paired with the Chargers' insane pass rush, is going to be extremely fun to watch. That's what I love out of a good and complete football team. Not just the offenses where you're like, yeah, man, break out the popcorn, things are about to get exciting, but the defense is going to be probably equally as fun to watch this season because of how much they've elevated their game with the additions that they have made. And finally, to kind of wrap up this video, last category here, Khalil Mack is an absolute wrecking ball, right? We all knew that Mack was going to be a big addition. We all celebrated. It feels like the Chargers fandom as a whole just cheered when we heard the news of 52 making the roster. But you know what? He is proving every single day that this is one of the best moves the Chargers could have possibly made in terms of bringing in new faces, right? This scrimmage gave us a great look at Khalil Mack's raw power, his tenacity, his force, what he's bringing to the table in those terms. He is just absolutely insane. The force that he provides translated to some big plays on Sunday, particularly I would say against the run. Also, shout out real quickly too, I think it was Trey Pipkins, Storm Norton. Those guys held their own very well versus Khalil Mack, despite the fact that Khalil Mack made some big plays, and that's a good sign to keep an eye on too. We did not have an offensive line segment on this video. Wanted to get that shout out in there. But Khalil Mack, particularly against the run, was looking very, very good, man. And this is an element that has been missing for a while now, not just in terms of power, but in terms of reliability on the edge position to defend against the run. I think he had 2 tackles for loss on those run plays, and that is exactly what you want to see as a Chargers fan, right? Khalil Mack, his attitude, his talent, his leading by example mentality is really something to witness, and we are absolutely seeing the reward in terms of this Chargers move this offseason very early. And in this scrimmage in particular, you got to see a lot of those qualities on display. Lastly, to shout out the edge position, I would say, of course, Joey Bosa was fantastic, but guys like Ty Shelby, Jamal Davis, looking very strong and physical as well. Again, it's going to be a fight, man. It's going to be a battle for anybody to make this team, maybe even the practice squad at this point, with how much quality depth the Chargers have all over this roster. So real quickly, to answer my own question from the top of the video, an underdog that I think could make the team, I think right now my favorite's got to be Damon Lloyd, right? The dude's been insane. The dude's been fantastic. I don't know what else to say about him, because the Chargers, who are maybe a little bit thin in terms of talent at linebacker, which again, Van Noy's great. Murray, I think, is going to bounce back. Tranquil's great. Right now, the biggest question mark is probably health. At that point, you got to consider a guy like Damon Lloyd, who again has been looking great versus the run, great versus the pass, all around very solid. I think he stands a very good chance at making this roster. The ability to hold your own against the pass is huge in this system, and Lloyd is proving to be an excellent value there. So to wrap up this video, my bottom line and things that we learned on Sunday, this team is great. The depth is insane. The battles that we're going to continue to see as we lead up to our first preseason game are going to be hard fought. The Chargers, for the first time in a long time, have a very complete looking team. We have quality depth all over the roster. We signed, I think, a former Oregon Duck and USFL member a couple of days ago in terms of depth of our offensive line. We signed another depth tight end. We've been signing so many guys that bring so much to the table at a value from a depth position, a depth perspective. The Chargers are looking very, very complete. And this is the mentality, this is the mindset that you want to have in terms of being a team ready to take on a full season, not only to improve your win record, but to make a very deep push into the postseason as well. This team is as ready as any of as I've seen as a Chargers fan, and it's really all starting to come together and becoming evident as we see and witness things like this scrimmage. And then, of course, this upcoming Saturday, the Chargers versus Rams preseason game. It's going to be a very fun one to watch. Well, guys, thank you for so much for joining me in this video. If we missed anything that was fun and exciting from the scrimmage, please let me know in the comments section below. There's a lot of really fun plays. There's a lot of cool stuff from Easton Stick. A lot of the second and third teamers make big plays too. A lot of big stuff there. Thank you again so much, you guys, for joining me in this video. We'll see you next time. If you did enjoy what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way back. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Go look at those Khalil Mack highlights, man. I cannot believe he's on our squad.